I'm going to make some boxes that I first saw Alan Batty make, and I guess I've also seen Bill Jones make some. It's a secret box for keeping £1 coins in. And so this is what the finished product looks like. This is made out of Vera wood. You can make them out of almost anything. This is cherry. Bill Jones and Alan Batty always made them out of a white plastic, so you didn't have to worry about lining up the grain. What happens is you push on this little spot in the center, and it pops the box out. You take the lid off, and this is supposed to be big enough, the right size to put the £1 coins in. And I don't have any £1 coins, so I just use a 2-inch piece of wood to start with and make them out of that. The only extra problem I've created is you have to line the grain up again when you put them away, or they don't look secret. So, first thing I'm going to do here is turn this round. It's a piece of Paduke. Got it at Woodcraft. Good. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I've theoretically turned this to approximately 2 inches in diameter. Looks like it's actually only about 1 3/4. That's what we'll use. You know, you should never part something off between centers. I need 2 pieces to do this, and I'm going to put a small tenon, a dovetail on the end of this. About that size, you think? I remember that. Not using my lathe here. It has a habit of speeding up because I touch the speed control with my forearm. I like to be real close to the lathe.
Everybody does that.
Uh-huh. So half of 1 3/4, 7/8. That's the center. Lost my pencil. Oh well. So I made a mark here at approximately 7/8 of an inch, and we'll start turning the sphere. Now this sphere we're turning now should be the best you can make it, but it doesn't have to be perfect.
Go ahead.
Now the chances are it's a little bit too long. It's going to be too long this way for this diameter. I mean, it's not important. I found my pencil. This is a cup chuck. To the best of my knowledge, it's the only way to make a good sphere. You can only have a single point of contact. If you use a tailstock, you may get close, but you're never going to get a really good sphere. Pardon me, I have to retrue my cup chuck whenever I put a new one on, and so that's what I'm going to do here first. The thing that makes a cup chuck work is this corner right here. If this corner is nice and clean and sharp, and it's got real close to 90 degrees, it doesn't have to be perfectly 90 degrees, like this on this side, and then like that on the other side. And it holds by friction. Bill Jones had a magic hammer. I don't, what he'd use it to whack this with. I don't have a magic hammer. I have a semi-special tool handle. And so what I've done is turned my piece of wood at 90 degrees. It was a spindle, now it's running cross grain. And I'm going to score a line on it. And so this line now runs perpendicular to the original grain. I've tried to go right to the center here. And as soon as these two ends connect up, that will be a sphere. That will be a circle, I should say. You don't want to go past, because then you end up leaving marks on your piece. Getting real close there, not quite touching, real close. See, it's just barely right there. Just so close. One more, one more. Okay, that'll be enough. Now, to go over what's happened. I started out with this piece of wood like this, and I cut a sort of sphere. And then I turned it at 90 degrees, put it back in, put it into a cup chuck, and scored this line. And so now I have a perfect circle going this way, and because of where this line is, that line is a perfect circle. Now I'm going to put this back on the original orientation so that it's a spindle again. Try to get it nice and straight. Use my sort of magical what do I call that? A super sort of magical what? Tool handle. Tool handle. Okay. Now I have to cut this surface down to the bottom of the ring I made. Doesn't really matter how I do it. There we go. I'm going to scrape the rest of it. Bill Jones used to tell a story about the billiard ball makers. They used to make billiard balls out of ivory. And he said they'd do this part I'm doing now, and once they had a good sphere, they would put them up on a shelf. He always did this. He always made that motion. And he'd leave them for 3 or 6 months, and then they'd take them down, and because the ivory was fresh enough, it will have moved. And what they would do is put it back in the cup chuck and cut a 32nd of an inch off, and to make the return to true. And once they'd done that, they'd put it back up on the shelf, and they followed that process 3 times, and they ended up with billiard balls made out of ivory. Let's see what we got. Are we close, you think? A little bit left, that's right. If I like to get pretty close, this affects, the whole rest of the project. On the other hand, I don't want to go too far. You all know the difference between almost there and oh darn it, don't you? I usually don't say oh darn it. Runs right into the second law. Let's see. Awful close. Just barely see the line. So I don't know if you can see it, there's a real tiny line right here. See it on the other side. And it's not worth quitting early. You have to get all the way down. Until you get it all gone, you haven't hit a sphere. Just a tiny, right around here. Okay, now this next part, as soon as I get this thing out of here, is the real advantage of the cup chuck. What I have just done is created a good sphere right here. And what I'm going to do is put that back in the cup chuck, and it registers. I'm going to have to make it a little smaller. What it does is it registers the sphere, just like a chuck, right? The chuck runs up against the top of the tailstock. Well, this runs up against the top, or registers itself on the inside of the cup chuck. And then you cut the outside of it, the side that's exposed, and it's round. How do you say this? Since this is round and this is what is holding the piece of wood, this is concentric to that, and that's what makes the good sphere. A lot of people like to use a tailstock, but you see the tailstock never works, because after you've turned, see, the ends are you can't get at the ends because they're covered by the chuck and the tailstock. And then when you, and so this is round, but not necessarily round this way. And then when you turn it like this, you still have these bumps on it, and they continue to push. So that your piece will never run true. It'll always have a little bumps. I'm trying to think of it. It's called Zeno's paradox. If you go halfway between here and the wall, and then you go halfway again, and then you go halfway again, and then you go halfway again, you never arrive. So, cut the next one down, do the heavy work with my gouge. Probably could cut that one more time. You think I can? Oh yes, we're going to cut that one more time. Okay, let's start scraping it. Now, I gotta admit here, if I were really cool, I'd do this with a gouge, but I'm not that cool. Someday maybe. Quite a ways to go yet. Close. I haven't seen any cigars. Okay, so you can still see some I got here out to the end. This is pretty close right there. You can, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a tiny, tiny little cut there. So there, and the end, which we already know about. Look at this. I'm going to know right where that's at. And so I'm going to dwell right there. That's where it needs cutting, and the end of it down here. All I see is this right here. Okay, I think that's good. Wow, there we go. Now what I'm going to do is put it back into as a spindle, back the same way we started out with the grain running parallel to the bed. Pretty close. Okay. Now I'm going to hollow it out. I'm only going to hollow enough to fit that box in. Because I'm using a cup chuck, which holds only by friction, I have to be a little more gentle than I might if the piece of wood were in a four-jawed chuck. I think I mentioned earlier that this was designed to work with 1-pound coins from Britain, and I don't know exactly what that size is, so I don't worry about it too much. I just let my box be whatever size it turns out. I try to maximize the size, in fact. Okay, let's see how deep we are. Our piece of wood is 1 3/4 shy. It's not actually probably full 1 3/4. And so, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to shoot this at about 1.5 inches, and I'm actually going to let it be a little less, I think. It's more important to succeed here than it is to make it perfect. Maximize the size. Now this is something else. I never measured this. I want the diameter of the box to be as large as I can also, but because of the design I'm going to put on later, I don't want my rings to intersect. And so I want this as big as possible, but not too big. Okay, I got a little more I can do. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, my tool here, it's a round nose scraper, but it's got this flat on it. And I'm using that flat now to create the long straight side.
Do you have the tool shaped specifically for this job?
No, this was something I started doing when I was making boxes. And so boxes on the lids have a straight, and so this is what I started doing. I do a little bit different now, but I still have that habit and I still do it. So I'm going to drill some of the rest of this. Use this. I'm going to drill at a little slower speed. I made a dimple in the middle, hopefully, to get my drill bit to run true. Give it a start. And what I'm doing is listening for the change of sound to know if I've gone far enough. And so I guess the question would be, how come I don't drill all of this out? And the easy answer is I just never started doing it. I never learned how to do it early on. I started reading some magazine articles after a while, and they would advocate drilling. And I tried that on some hollow forms, but the drill bits, I mean, they're fairly big drill bits, right? And they always vibrated, and it got worse the deeper you drilled. And I didn't like it. It scared me. And so when I started making pipes, I had to drill 1/8-inch diameter holes, 3 or 4 inches long, and there was just no way that a drill bit would not wander if I used the tailstock. And so I learned how to drill those holes by hand. When I started actually talking to the pipe makers, they were always talking about these big drill bits that they bought, between 3/4 and 1.25 inches in diameter, and they were all different shapes and sizes. And they were shapes and sizes because the pipe bowls that they were making were all different shapes and sizes. And they were spending lots and lots of money about it, and a lot of technical talk about what was good and what was bad. And so I don't know. None of them were Woodturners, and so I just figured I was doing fine without that extra problem. And I guess the last thing, that pertains to what we're doing here is if you use a drill bit that's big enough, it will always bounce. It will always vibrate, and that vibration will knock something out of a cup chuck real fast. Now I want to show you one little nifty thing here that I found. So the leading edge of this tool is round, and so it makes the inside of your box, the bottom of your box, round. So what I started doing is to use an old skew, run it straight down the side, and cut out the round corner. Now it's a bad cut, it's a rot gut cut, but if you're careful it works. Okay, so that's the end of this operation. Ugh. So my cup chuck works so good that I can't get it out. Oh, I lied. I got it out. This, like I said, that's the first time I ever tried a twist drill. I really don't like the end of that, the way it left it kind of ugly looking. And so I'm going to clean it up a little. Now, I really, really want to get this running true because I don't want to change the shape of this circle. It's pretty close, isn't it?
Live center?
Ooh, I hadn't considered that. That's pretty good, isn't it? You think it's pretty close? Okay. And what I'm going to do is just clean up that hole a little bit. And so this tool is a side cutting scraper, and I'm going to run it up against that edge. Pretty clean, isn't it? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, this part is done for the moment. I got a long ways in there. I don't know what that is. 3/8 of an inch between the end of this and the bottom of that box on the inside. And so this next one, what do you think about that? Okay. I'm keeping my cup chuck here. I'm changing chucks, and the reason is because I don't want to take my cup chuck off and have to remake it or resize it. And so, I brought another chuck. That's why I put that dovetail on there earlier. Now this piece needs to be approximately the same length as the original one. I'm going to make two pieces out of it, but you know, how much wood do you need? Well, approximately the same length. That was 1 3/4, and so I need approximately 1 3/4. It might be nice to leave it a hair longer, but you don't have to. I'm going to run it true again. Okay, so I have two boxes, two pieces of a box to make here. It's a little box that fits inside the sphere. Clean the end of my piece. Remember, I cut it with a parting tool. Who knows what the first law is? First law is it ain't the tool. Okay, got my little dovetail on there. Okay, so what I have to do is measure the diameter of my opening here, and I need to make a lid that fits. I'm going to get the approximate size. I'm not going to trust this size. I'm going to get the approximate size using this. close. I'm going to create the inside of the lid. Now the inside of the lid has to match the small box, the tenon on the small box. Now this mortise here doesn't have to be very deep. Probably a little deeper than that though, huh? Okay, that's more than enough. Let's make it a little thinner though, just for fun. Okay. Take a little more off the base here. Clean it up, make it pretty. Put a few gewgaws on the inside of my box just because I can. You think we ought to cut it off? Does it matter? Okay, there's the lid for the little box. Here's the piece I'm going to use to make the box itself. First thing that I have to do with this, I have to make the tenon that fits inside the little box. have about starting to fit. That's about it. So, how come I didn't finish this up, cut it off when I had the chance? See all that stuff on the lid? I'm gonna do it right now. So look at that, it's a chuck. Isn't that sneaky? Now I'm being real careful about not getting into my little place there. That's my mortise for fitting into the big box. In fact, I think I'll just quit right here. I'm going to do the rest of it later. Make sure it runs true. Whew, don't tell anybody. Okay. There we go. So there's most of the lid done. It'll get another little, get another little cut on the outside here. So what I'm going to do now, I know what the diameter of my box is. The inside of my box has to fit inside this opening, so it doesn't quite. See how deep it is. Now I've never been real clear about exactly what this size should be. And I've always adjusted things later. You know, just kind of take a little bit off here, take a little bit off there to make it fit. It takes a little bit of time to do that, and so I'm not going to do that now. I'm just going to leave it a little thick, I think. Do the corner on the inside of the bottom. Now I'm using a skew on purpose. I do not use that square end scraper, this square end scraper here, because you end up touching too much too fast. The skew, because it's got this corner on it, only touches here, and I'm getting used to how it feels inside as I cut deeper and deeper and use more and more of the skew. This scares me. This works real well. You have to be fairly careful how you hold it. You can't be lackadaisical. And so what I'm doing is making the outside of the box, has to fit inside here. Not quite, real close. Gonna just trim a little off. I thought about it too. I tried 100 yen coins and I tried quarters. Okay, so this is good enough. Think about this. How long is it? It's plenty long. I'm just going to okay. There we go. It's right there, but not quite. We're gonna break out the cigars after this one. Still too tight. Close. You have to be able to get it off later. Okay, I'm going to use a tailstock here. Probably don't need it, but we might. What I have to do, turn this end down to that size. A long ways to go. But I guess that hole wasn't too big after all. This, I have an opening inside. Just how long is it? It would be unfortunate to expose the hole on the inside to the outside. So, I want to clean the end of this. Okay. Sorry.
No.
So now,
I have a question on the cup check.
okay,
Is that, is that cup check coming, it's not, it's below the horizon. I'm below the equator on that.
right. Yeah, if it's above, you just end up with empty.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's not on the equator.
Right, you have to have just a,
You gotta have
to
it.
have a little exposed. Okay. Otherwise it can be pushed down. Pretty close, right? Ew. Wish you'd make up its mind, huh? To be hard or not. Yeah. Yeah, that's close enough, isn't it? Let's try it again. Let's prove it. So, there you go. Use the other one. Yeah, good enough. It's good enough, isn't it? I know that all this time spent fiddling with the sphere isn't much fun, but it's something you have to do. Those the ends of the box, the small end of the box, and the top of the lid have to be running true, and that's what those two details are for. They're there to hide those two joints. That's the only thing that makes it a secret, I guess. And so what I did was I set the two sets of calipers to those size, one for the small end and one for the lid. I always work from the inside out just because it's easier for me. I start with the pencil mark in the center, and because that helps me know where to put the next marks. And then I always do the caliper that's set to the small size of the small end of the box because it's easier to find using that point. And then I can find the greater diameter, which is the lid of the box, using the small end mark that I've already made. The calipers are necessary because I have to repeat those same two details on all six sides of the box, or that's their camouflage essentially. And I call them details because that's what they are. These are not gewgaws. These may be there as decoration, but they also serve a function. Now the rest of the cuts I'm making, the bead, the other half of the bead, and the cove, those are gewgaws. They serve no function except what they look like. You can see how careful I am to center this one. I use the two previous cuts that I made, the two previous centers, and I check to see how far they stick out of the cup chuck, and that's how I derive the third center. And this is the third one. I'm going to show the process once more, just so because it's at a different angle, and I don't think you probably need to see it again, and we'll go quickly through the rest of them. That's pretty close, isn't it?
Looks like it.
Okay. Probably not. That's not bad. I think that's the problem though, right there. Ooh. Okay. Okay. Now you have to figure out how to open it.
It was a dark colored one.
That ain't it. There we go. Okay.
Cool. Very nice.
Okay.